Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Twins Daily Postgame Pint. The date today is Sunday, September 20th, 2020. We're here to talk about the Twins-Cubs series finale. It's currently the bottom of the eighth, so we are going to talk through the last couple innings here. Hopefully the Twins can seal up this victory. My name is Nick Nelson from twinsdaily.com, and joined here tonight by a couple of Twins Daily writers. We might have another one on the way too. But first, let's get we'll get caught up on the game. Twins are up 4-0. Bottom of the eighth. Taylor Rogers is in to pitch against the Cubs. Let's get acquainted with our panelists tonight. We've got Matthew, one of our many Matthews. Matthew Trueblood is here with us tonight. Matthew, how are you doing tonight, man? Are you enjoying a post-game pint?
I am. It's a craft soda, actually, not a beer, but it is a Filbert's root beer out of Chicago, and picked it up at Blue Sun Soda Shop up here in Blaine, where I live. A lot of good options and a fun way to unwind without being too groggy tomorrow morning.
Very nice. Yeah, that sounds about right for a Sunday evening. Another big week getting started tomorrow for all of us, but especially for the Twins, and we'll talk about it. Also here with us tonight is David Youngs of twinsdaily.com, one of our many great writers and a regular panelist here on the Postgame Pint. David, how are you doing tonight, my man? Are you having yourself a little beverage to unwind here at the end of the weekend?
I absolutely am. Well, it's great to be here, Nick. Great to be back on another post-game pint. I'm just drinking your classic Coors Light tonight. Beer of the Rockies, also beer of the rolling hills of southern Minnesota down here in St. Peter. But I'm doing all right, and it's great to be here, and hopefully we'll get to talk about a Twins win.
Yes, hoping so. So as I mentioned, 4-0 in the game. We're going to kind of talk through the end of it. We'll talk about this series against the Cubs, talk about the road trip that the Twins are wrapping up here, and set the stage a little bit for the final week of the season, talk about some playoff scenarios. We're all of a sudden basically at the finish line. As I mentioned, my name is Nick of twinsdaily.com. We appreciate everyone tuning in. If you're watching this via Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Periscope, what have you, please feel free to comment. We see your comments pop up on a little panel here, and we love to kind of let everyone else guide the direction of the show. We'll pop your comment up like Tanner here saying, good game. This has been a very good game. Frankly, says Barrios pitched well, and that is very true. We'll definitely be talking about Jose Barrios. In fact, let's get started. Let's talk about Jose Barrios. I want to say he had a great outing tonight against the Cubs. Let's see here. 6 innings, 4 hits, 0 runs, 4 strikeouts, 1 walk. Just taking a look at his line. I heard the announcers. Tonight is the national game of the week, Sunday Night Baseball for the Twins, getting on the national stage. I heard the announcers say very matter-of-factly, Jose Barrios is going to be the Twins' Game 1 starter. They're very convinced of this. That has not been my opinion. I would be surprised if that was the case, and a little disappointed. Matthew, do you think that Jose Barrios is lined up to be the Twins' Game 1 starter, and do you think he should be?
No, and no. I mean, Barrios is fantastic, and I don't think that he's quite established himself to a level where you kind of have to give it to him as a default. So I don't think it'll happen for that reason. I don't think it should happen, not because he's not pitching at that level. He was tremendous tonight, but because Kenta Maeda's clearly on another level. And I advise strongly to everyone, anytime that your team is on the ESPN Sunday Night Game of the Week, that you watch it on mute. These guys just don't know what they're talking about. They don't.
Unlike, I used to do that sometimes with the Twins games with our good friend Bert. Thanks for all your work, Bert. But off to sunnier pastures. And now Justin Morneau. David, I know you're a big fan. I know you've been kind of tracking Justin Morneau's insights. Justin Morneau, I think, has been doing a phenomenal job. I'm missing him tonight, that's for sure. But what's your thought on Barrios and Maeda and sort of the battle for the first start in the playoffs, David?
Yeah, well, I echo what the choir has said in that, Kenta Maeda is the Minnesota Twins playoff Game 1 starter. No doubt about it. He has earned that right. He's pitched consistently all year. He hasn't had a blunder of a game where he's just, teams have hit off of him super well. Absolutely, Barrios is pitching wonderful. And that's great to see. And that's, we could have the conversation of, well, do you put Barrios or Pineda as your 2 or your three. Matthew Lenz, another one of our Matthews, posted a great article on Twins Daily yesterday talking about what that rotation is going to look like. I would encourage followers of Twins Daily to check it out. But I just think that consistency proves to be successful, especially when it comes to postseason baseball. And Kenta Maeda has not only been really, really good this year, he's been really consistent. So as much as it's fun to see the Twins on the national spotlight on good old ESPN, I would have to agree with most of Twins faithful in saying that Kenta Maeda is our game one starter.
The consistency is really something that stands out to me. He just hasn't really had a bad start. I mean, Barrios has had a few clunkers here and there where he just doesn't seem to quite have it. At his worst, Maeda maybe gives up a couple home runs or like a 3-run homer. I think he gave up in one start. And that was kind of the worst of it. Maybe a couple swings of the bat, but he's pretty locked in, and his pitch repertoire is deep enough that he really seems to be keeping people off balance pretty consistently, I think. Matthew, I know you're kind of a Cubs fan. You follow the Cubs pretty closely. In this series so far, we've seen them score 2 runs total, getting shut out tonight. Are the Twins pitching this well, or is the Cubs offense just not that good?
It can be both, and I think it is. The Cubs have been in pretty rough offensive shape for quite a while now. Folks who have been watching throughout the series have seen a lot of ugly slash lines splashed up, attached players that you're used to seeing perform at a star level. Anthony Rizzo, Javier Baez, Chris Bryant. They are all in various ways kind of broken at the plate. But this was still a team that was starting to round into form, had a big comeback win 8 nights ago, I guess, in Milwaukee. Had a blowout win last Sunday when they also threw a no-hitter. And then only played 2 games in the middle of the week against Cleveland. But Cleveland, we know very well what the Indians pitching staff looks like, and the Cubs pushed across enough runs to win both of those games. This is a good reminder that the Twins bullpen, the Twins pitching staff overall, is just a degree deeper than really anyone else in this central pod of teams. You can talk about beyond that, but they are the clear class, the clear cream of the crop when it comes to pitching in this section of the league at this point. And they've looked really good, partially because right now the Cubs are just not in a position to take advantage of other teams' mistakes, of pitchers' mistakes. But they've also pitched really well throughout the series and kept the pressure on the Cubs to create some opportunities that they haven't been able to.
Yeah, as we talk about pitching well, Trevor May came in with a very good relief appearance. He's looked very strong. Seems like he's having no issues with the back that forced him out of an outing pretty recently. Taylor Rogers just came out and pitched the 8th, scoreless 8th. That's really good to see. Rogers now seemingly maybe not in that closer role. We've seen him pitch the 8th inning a couple times recently. I don't know if it's situational. I mean, it could very well be that, when we get to the playoffs here, Rocco's just going to play a really situational game based on who's coming up in the 9th. I don't know that the Twins have a set closer right now. It seems like it's kind of Romo on the one hand, who struggled a little bit the other day. Rogers, who struggled earlier, on Monday, now has a good outing. David, what's your feeling on the 9th inning as we kind of approach the playoffs here, and who do you feel most confident in?
Yeah, well, I think that's the $1 million question. The Twins truly don't have a solidified closer right now. I was thinking about it the other day. I mean, the Twins truly haven't had a stud closer, probably arguably since Joe Nathan.
Matt Capps.
Yeah. There you go. You nailed it on the head. But I think that, my gut still, when you look at types of pitchers, Taylor Rogers, the stuff that he has, the opportunities there, but obviously this year hasn't been great. But when you also look at the postseason, looking at Romo, he's got that postseason experience exponentially more than Rogers has, and that could prove to benefit him in that race. But I'm curious to see who we put out there tonight in the 9th. I unfortunately aren't able to cast the game to my TV as I normally would because it's on ESPN tonight and not on Fox Sports North, another benefit of the local broadcast. But I would say, if they don't keep Rogers in there, Romo, or even, given a 4-0 lead, Alcala maybe. But we'll see.
They've got some interesting options. Matt Whistler looked unbelievable, ridiculous the other night. I mean, 6 strikeouts in 3 innings or whatever. So we talked a little bit about the Maeda versus Barrios game 1, game 2 setup. It's obvious those two are going to start the first 2 games of the playoffs, not necessarily obvious what order they will go in. I think we all believe that Maeda clearly should be the game 1 starter just based on everything we know right now. I mean, he's phenomenal. He's been a top 10 major league pitcher this year by pretty much any measure. Frank asks who would be the 3rd pitcher in the first round. The presumption in my mind has been Michael Pineda, and he looked good again last night. He seems to be kind of sealing that up. I'm wondering if anyone thinks that maybe Rich Hill's very, very strong outing in this series has changed the equation at all. You know, Hill definitely does have the experience in the playoffs, he's pitched in the World Series. He's a veteran. He's got all that going for him. Matthew, do you still see Pineda kind of being the game 3 guy, or do you think maybe there's a possibility it'll be one of those short leash, Rich Hill ready to go kind of situations? What's your expectation at this point?
I think the only scenario in which it turns out to be Hill instead of Pineda is the unlikely but still possible scenario in which the Twins do come back, win the American League Central, and end up facing Cleveland in the wild card round. The Cleveland offense, we saw, I think it was last Sunday, we saw how they can kind of give Michael Pineda problems just because, his changeup is by far the worst of his 3 main pitches, and he's not as comfortable yet throwing the slider against lefties as I think he might be if he had been able to pitch throughout this entire season and stay healthy all of last year. So if they get Chicago, or if they get New York, or even if they get Toronto, these are very right-handed heavy lineups. It's a pretty easy call for me to take Pineda, who's going to dominate with that slider that he's throwing more than ever, with a ton of depth on it. It's a great pitch. And I think that's just where you go. He's reliable in those situations. Cleveland throws some more wrinkles into his game, and then you might consider Hill instead. But at this point, the odds of that particular situation even coming to pass so that you have to make that tough call are something like 5%. So I'd say it's a pretty safe bet that Michael Pineda is your game 3 starter.
Yeah, we'll talk a little bit later on about some of the playoff scenarios, what could happen in the last week of the season and how that would affect the playoff seeding and who the Twins will face in the playoffs. Of course, they clinched their spot last night, so they will be playing in the Major League playoffs this year. They will be one of the 8 entrants from the American League when things get underway a week from Tuesday. So there was, some debate. I think it's generally been assumed, like Matthew said, probably Pineda in game 3 of the first round, which that's all you need. There's only a maximum of 3 games in the first round. You get to that second round, you might be talking about a 4th starter, especially with no off days as a new wrinkle this year with the postseason. I think that, Hill, if he's not starting game 3, pretty much is locked in at game 4 just because of circumstances at this point. Dobnak has been sent to the minors. Jake Odorizzi, he's got a couple weeks to get right before that ALDS series would be going down, but he's not going to really have a chance to get a start and build up. And I feel so bad for the guy. I know he could be such a factor for the Twins if he was able to pitch, but I just don't know if he's going to be a significant factor in the postseason. David, what's your feeling about Odorizzi at this point? Do you see a chance that he could still play a role in the playoffs? And also, do you feel like Rich Hill pretty clearly is that 4th guy right now?
Yeah, well, I think absolutely Rich Hill's the 4 guy. And when it comes to the debate between is he the 3 or is he the 4, I like to look at it from the perspective of Rich Hill could be a, average to mediocre 3 pitcher, or he could be a very solid 4 pitcher in that playoff rotation. Why wouldn't you put him at the solid 4 spot and, potentially have him start that first or second game of the second series if they move on? And I feel with you, Nick. You hurt for Odorizzi. You can't wish that upon anybody to have 3 injuries in a 60-game season. And my guy Justin Morneau brought up the other night, for people at home saying, "Oh, it's just a paper cut. Like, why? It's not that big of a deal." You got to think about, a major league pitcher. What's one of the most important parts of his body? It's his finger. He needs that to get rotation on the ball, get spin on the ball. So I do think Obviously, like you said, he's got a few weeks to ripen up, and if he is healthy, I don't know if I would trust him to start a game just because he hasn't had a whole lot of experience this year. Obviously, he's had experience in the past, but at the same time, I also, can't see him in a bullpen role either. Certainly, he's a good pitcher. He was an all-star last year, but all the cards are kind of against him right now. And I'd say best case scenario, he's able to get one regular season start in, but that's unlikely going to happen. And I don't know. He's a good pitcher, but it comes down to the question of where can you use him, and I don't know if that role is the bullpen or not.
Yep. So it's pretty much all about trying to get ourselves geared up for the postseason, to understand what the layout of the roster is, what the approach is going to be, and how are the Twins going to be in a good place as they kind of come into this series, very likely against the Yankees in the first round. One key piece in that conversation, I think, is Max Kepler. He's a guy who has been struggling mightily. He was such a key piece for the Twins last year. He's a big part of this team and their attack on both sides. I see Tanner asking who should lead off in the postseason, Buxton or Kepler. Kepler was struggling, and he had another moment on defense tonight. Kepler has always been such a strong, fundamental defensive player, I've always thought, and there was a play tonight where he just airmailed a throw to third base and gave a guy second base, and it's just he had the drop in right field a couple weeks ago. He had the missed throw that was super costly last week against the White Sox. But big breakout game for Max Kepler. As we were talking here, I just saw him hit a double. He's having a big game. He's having a big game that he needed. I was looking at the StatCast. For the first 4 balls that Mitch Garver put into play tonight had an exit velocity of 99 miles per hour or higher. Big night for Max Kepler. Matthew, how do you feel about seeing Kepler kind of maybe starting to get some confidence back and getting his swing going again here?
I'm not sure there's any single development that could happen for the Twins at this point that would be more encouraging or more important, right? I mean, when it comes to this team kind of functioning the way they're supposed to offensively, a lot of it starts at the top. It starts with Kepler against right-handed pitching, particularly. He can go in attack mode. He can produce that power that we saw tonight. He opens things up if he's hitting well at the top of the order. You don't have to kind of piece things together the same way and sort of go, I don't feel great about this person batting here. Everything in the lineup sort of falls into place if Max Kepler is hitting the way he did for most of 2019. And, I was talking last night on the same stream about not really thinking that guy, that sort of superstar level Kepler, is necessarily coming back on a prolonged basis, but the guy that he was in the latter part of 2018, a really solid, really well-rounded hitter, should still be in there. And it's been a struggle, but we're starting to see more and more, not just good swings, but I think putting himself in position to get the pitch that he can put the good swing on, which is what was missing for him for most of this season, frankly. He was able to execute the swing when he got the pitch he needed, but he wasn't always guessing right, and he wasn't always in the count that he needed in order to guess well. So seeing that start to swing in the other direction, especially tonight, really exciting and really important if this team wants to go anywhere.
Yeah, definitely. To answer the question, Tanner, my feeling is, the Yankees are going to probably bring right-handed starters in the first couple games. It's probably going to be Cole and Tanaka and maybe J.A. Happ in the third game, being a lefty. So I would assume Kepler will be the leadoff man, at least for those first 2 games. I could see Buxton leading off the third if it gets there. Rocco's old plan of starting Mitch Garver as the leadoff man against lefties is probably not going to be in play this postseason, and we'll talk about him a little bit because I see some questions in the chat about that. David, is that your impression? Do you think that Rocco is going to go with sort of a Kepler as the leadoff man against righties, Buxton against lefties, or what's your view?
Yeah, well, I think sorry, there's a loud motorcycle going.
No worries.
My apartment. All right, there we go. It has passed. Yeah, I would say certainly start out against with Kepler against those righties, with Cole and Tanaka, and then yes, go to Buxton. I do think tonight it was really promising, like Matthew said, to see Kepler break out 3 for 5, especially with that last double that he had. I know you could call it garbage time, perhaps, but hey, you know what? He's hitting the ball well. It's a confidence booster, and so I think that's big. And what you know that is we've had this conversation about who should they bat lead off quite a bit. But wouldn't it be awesome if that could become a luxury for the Twins of having to make that decision if Buxton and Kepler start to pick it up here, and both are hitting well? If we get to that situation, that's not the worst problem to have in the world.
Indeed, very very well said. So we were wondering earlier about who might pitch the ninth. Sergio Romo is out there pitching the ninth for the Twins here. Not a save situation. The Twins are up 4-0, so you can't necessarily draw any super closer conclusions about it. But with as close as we're getting to the postseason, I think it's telling the way that Rocco has managed his bullpen in this game. He went May. Rogers is the setup man. Romo is the closer. So that's interesting to see. Jeffrey asks, if you're watching this, by the way, everyone, no matter what you're watching through, you can comment. We can see your comments. We'll pull it in like Jeffrey's here. I'm happy to answer you guys' questions, kind of pulling your thoughts on the game, on the Twins as they approach the end of the season here. Jeffrey says Sano and Garver are not right. I don't know the fix for the postseason, but what do you guys think? We'll talk about Garver in a little bit because I think that's an interesting conversation on its own. But Sano tonight has been, as good as the Twins have looked, Sano has looked that bad. He's a streaky guy who is prone to looking really bad when he's off, and we all know that. But I can't remember seeing an offensive performance as bad as this one from Sano tonight. He struck out 4 times on 13 pitches. He took 1 ball, and I'm pretty sure I think they're almost all swinging strikes. He's just up there whiffing to an insane degree. David, what's your feeling watching Sano tonight? I mean, obviously it's just streakiness, but we're coming up on the end of the season, and he is just not seeing the ball.
Yeah, well, I think obviously this is the time of the year when you want to see your hitters show the best plate discipline, and that's not what we saw from Sano tonight. Like you mentioned, he's a streaky player. Hit an absolute moonshot last night out of the ballpark at Wrigley onto the streets of North Chicago. But at the same time, it comes down to the question of, yes, we get that every now and then. But is it worth it when it comes to he's going to have games like this fairly consistently? So I think when it comes down to Sano, really got to focus on that plate consistency and plate discipline in this next week. Now, obviously, he tonight was going up against Yu Darvish, who is the ace of the Cubs. Who, by the way, the Twins hit well. The Twins tied Cleveland for the most hits off of Darvish this year with 9 hits. Nobody else has done better than the Twins in Cleveland against them this year. So that's a positive, but Sano certainly did not contribute to that. So I think, if Sano is able to get some confidence going against some weaker pitchers, which obviously has been an Achilles for the Twins, but that's going to be key. But yeah, things like we saw tonight, they don't get your hopes up.
No, I mean, with any batter, they're going to go through slumps, and Sano especially. But it's not so much just about whether he's locked in and hitting the ball. I mean, what's very obvious to me is the quality of his plate appearances. I mean, obviously tonight they've been awful. I was looking earlier. In the month of September so far, he has drawn 2 walks only. They're both in the same game. He's got now 32 strikeouts. So that's basically a 10-1 strikeout to walk ratio. In August, he drew 15 walks against like 45 strikeouts, so more of like a 3-1 ratio, which is really where you want Miguel to be. And drawing a walk is such a big part of his game. We talk about the big mammoth home runs, and those are great, but he's not a guy who hits a lot of singles. He is kind of all or nothing at the plate, so he has to be able to supplement those home runs in some way. Matthew, what's your feeling about Sano's patience right now, his plate approach, and his ability to really bring enough to the table if he is just not ever walking?
Yeah, I mean, and this is another conversation that we sort of went over last night. It's worth always keeping in mind that for Sano, the strikeouts are not a number to focus on because they're going to be at a very high level, even when he's going well, and it just kind of creeps up a little bit to the truly catastrophic tier when he's going badly. And the power is not necessarily the number to focus on because he can run into one even when he's not going well. The walks are where you can start to get a sense of how he's doing. But also, is he squaring the ball up and putting it in play sometimes? He hits the ball so hard that he can generate a lot of line drives, singles, and doubles when his swing is in the right spot and he is seeing the ball well and getting on plane with the pitch as it's coming into him. I think some of that is what's not happening right now, and it's always a challenge for a hitter with this profile to organize his approach at the plate in a way where you're being patient enough to get those walks, but you're also not exposing yourself to so many deep counts that you're vulnerable to striking out. He obviously is going to have to make some adjustments. The thing with Sano, as you mentioned, is he's streaky, and the form of that streakiness is he could turn it around tomorrow and be basically the guy you need him to be. It doesn't take a long time to work out of funks for him. It's just a matter of when does that combination of the timing of the swing, there's so much movement in his load phase, when does that start to sync up with seeing the ball well and thinking properly about how the pitcher's going to attack him? That could fall into place anytime, but what I do want to see with just 5 games left in the season and a couple more off days, he should be in there every day and hopefully batting as high in the lineup as Baldelli's willing to write him in, because you want him to get those reps. You want him to get as many chances to work out of that in game action where it's probably going to happen as possible before everything is on the line.
Agreed. Yeah, getting him those reps is important, and I think it's key to not react. If you see him high in the lineup in some of these remaining games at Target Field, don't freak out. He's hitting so poorly. Why are you putting him so high in the lineup? That's why he should be so high in the lineup. They need to get him at bats. They need to get him seeing the ball better. They need to get him, draw some walks, hit a couple home runs, get that confidence back. They're going to need Sano in the postseason. The rest of their lineup has been pretty hit or miss. And one guy high on that list who I think is interesting to talk about is Garver, who's been the other kind of low light in a solid night for the offense against Yu Darvish and a good Cubs pitching staff. I see Mike Link ask, are they going to use Jeffers, or are they committed to the 2 vets who I see as much less capable? So Baldelli kind of has interesting competing priorities right here, I think, because, Garver went 0 for 4 tonight with 3 strikeouts. He does not look good. He looks no better than he did when he went on the IL, but it's a very small sample far, and if there's a chance to get Garver back to anywhere close where he was last year, you got to try to do it. But at the same time, you can't count on that at all, and there's only 5 games left after tonight. Obviously, Garver started Friday and Sunday. He came in midway through last night's game. He's seeing a lot of action. I think Baldelli wants to try to get him back as sharp as he can, but can you do that at the expense of getting playing time for Jeffers, who right now, frankly, just looks like the guy who should be starting game 1 of the playoffs? He's outplaying both of the other guys. David, what's your feeling on the catcher situation, and how would you be approaching this in the last week if you were Rocco?
Yeah, well, I completely agree. Ryan Jeffers is the best catcher right now in the Minnesota Twins, the way that he's playing, both defensively, both at the plate, and there's something to be said for that. And I think that's promising for the Twins organization going into the future. But when you look at the situation right now, you've got a week left in the season, postseason coming near. That sense of you've got 2 seasoned veterans as far as catchers, where it is tough. I agree that Baldelli's got he's got multiple things going on, and that's a multifaceted decision to make. I would really like to see him use Jeffers more, though. As much as I love Mitch Garver behind the plate, but more so at the plate hitting. Ryan Jeffers is just hitting the ball better right now, and like you mentioned, the offense is really hit or miss right now. And I'll tell you what, Ryan Jeffers is a heck of a lot more consistent of a hitter right now than Alex Avila or Mitch Garver. So while it's not an easy decision to make by any means, I think it's one where Jeffers has earned that right to play in the postseason, and not only play in the postseason, but to be a big-time player in the postseason.
Agreed. Yeah, that's he takes great at bats, which I think is such a huge thing, and so unbelievably impressive for a rookie his age. Matthew, what's your feeling on the catcher situation, on what you've seen from Garver so far, and what would be your approach here in the last week?
Well, I was surprised, given that Nelson Cruz is still nursing his knee soreness, and so they had to, get someone into the DH slot tonight, that they elected to move Sano there, start Lamont Wade at first base, and have Garver catch, as opposed to having Garver DH and Jeffers catch, and just keep Sano out at first. I think that they didn't choose that shows that they want Garver working on catching. So they are envisioning him at least as a potential starter in a playoff situation. Because otherwise, this was a really easy chance to say, Mitch, we need to find out how ready you're going to be offensively, but also, there's a slot to do that tonight where we can still have Jeffers behind the plate. So it's going to be interesting to see how they disperse these last 5 remaining starts at catcher. Probably Alex Avila won't get one, and yet Alex Avila is the guy you feel pretty sure of what his role is, right? When October does come, or late September, the wild card series, he'll be on the roster as the backup. I think all 3 guys will be on the roster because you can shorten the rotation. You don't need Rich Hill on the roster at all for that 3-game set. But then the question is, which guy starts? And to me, it should be Jeffers, just because you have so much more certainty about where he is. I think as bad as Garver looked tonight, he looked great hitting the single that broke the game open last night. And we've seen the defensive improvements that he made last year. I don't want to pretend that those are gone just because he struggled a bit this season and then was banged up. But to me, there's so much more information, and unless Garver over these next few games is able to get a bunch of reps and show you something totally different, I think you've got to start Jeffers in at least game 1 and go from there.
I think so too. It's going to be really interesting to see how that plays out. A rookie versus a reigning Silver Slugger. So little time this season to figure things out, especially for anyone who's missed time, as Garver did. Mike Link says in the chat here, I have no confidence to know. Sorry, but I have to look at his Ks. I do not care how far the ball carries when he connects. They do not give you credit more for more than 1 run based on how far it goes. 13 home runs and 11 singles. That's kind of a crazy stat. 13 home runs and 11 singles.
Right. People too often, though, say they don't give you extra credit for how far the ball goes. They also don't give you an extra penalty for striking out as opposed to grounding out.
It's a valid counterpoint. Yeah.
Again, with Sano, what you have to watch is the walks and whether he's squaring the ball up when he puts it in play. Those are the things that are missing right now. So you're right that Sano is struggling, but don't make that judgment based on strikeouts, or you're going to keep misevaluating the player.
Yeah. So we talked a little bit about the shakiness of the 9th inning, the uncertainty around the closer role. Sergio Romo comes in tonight, loads the bases with 2 outs. It looks like he did just get a strikeout to end the game, so the Twins have won 4-0. Yeah, never a shortage of drama around here these days. Laverne Renee says, Romo scares the hell out of me in this spot. I'd rather see Duffy in the end. That's something we've talked a little bit about. I am of the mind that your best relief pitcher should not be your closer. There are situations where they should take a save situation, but I'm always a fan of having a guy like Duffy, who I think is definitely the Twins' best relief pitcher. I like having him available to face the heart of the opposing lineup in the 7th inning. I don't want to be sitting there waiting on him for an eventual save situation. So, I definitely understand why you get a little scared about seeing Romo out there. He's been a little shaky lately, and it was not the cleanest outing. But the Twins are, in fact, at the end of the day, able to get a shutout. In fact, a phenomenal showing by the Twins pitching staff in this series. 2 runs in 3 games. So I'll just quickly pull up the Gamecast game recap here as we look at the final here. Twins with a 4-0 victory. Not quite final on here, but they're going to move to 33-22. Cubs will fall to 31-22. As I mentioned, Kepler, 4 hard hit balls tonight, according to StatCast, had the home run, 3 RBIs, 3 hits. He had a nice, well-struck double. Really good to see Josh Donaldson, who's a little bit of a sore spot for me after his actions last week, but we don't need to get into it because I got yelled at by everyone on Twitter for saying so last night. He has 2 hits, 2 walks. He's looking pretty good. Rosie 1 for 5. Sano and Garver, as we mentioned, struggled. Barrios, outstanding. Bullpen, outstanding. Look at that. I mean, seven strikeouts for May, Rogers, and Romo. no hits allowed. That's pretty tremendous stuff right there. It is worth noting, we just mentioned that Romo loaded the bases. One of them was a strikeout that got away from the catcher. So not like he got knocked around by any means. Yu Darvish pitched pretty well, 9 strikeouts, 1 walk in 6 innings. But look at all that hard contact. The Twins came to play here on national TV on Sunday night. They put a charge into some of these balls, really knocked them around quite a bit. As you can see, Jake Cave with the second hardest hit. And, hey, Mitch Garver with the third hardest hit of the game. That's a good sign, right? So the Twins now, there's some interesting scenarios, I think, to discuss here with regards to where we stand going into the final week. The Twins now, with the White Sox and Yankees both losing today. Well, let's talk first about the AL Central race, because the Twins are not necessarily totally out of it. I've left some notes here. Minnesota, it's nice to see them get a couple straight victories to end their road schedule. It's obviously been kind of tough on the road this year. They're going to finish at 12-17 on the road. Not nearly as good as they were at home, of course. But now they're coming home. 5 more games against relatively softer competition. The Tigers for a couple games, the Guardioless Tigers, and followed by the Reds this weekend. So Twins are down now by 2 games behind the White Sox. The White Sox hold the tiebreaker because they have a better interdivision record thanks to beating up on said Tigers, and the Royals, 18-2 record against those teams. So unfortunately with the Twins losing that game last Thursday, that caused the season split. They lost that as a tiebreaker to hold over the White Sox. So bottom line is, in order to win the division, they have to have a better record than the White Sox. So the Sox, I believe, are playing at Cleveland for 4 games, followed by 3 games at home against who do they finish against?
The Cubs.
The Cubs, yes. So two playoff teams that they're going to be facing down the stretch. I believe the case is that the Twins need to go like 6-0 and have them, or no, Twins need to go like 5-1 and have them go like 2-5, or Twins need to go 6-0 and have them go 3-4. So it's not out of the question they could win the division, but it seems really unlikely. Matthew, do you think the Twins still have a shot in the Central, or are you totally setting your sights on the Yankees at this point?
I think it's obviously a real outside shot, just because it's easy to imagine sweeping the Tigers in 2. But then you get the Reds, who are likely to be essentially playing for their playoff lives on some level that weekend.
Yeah, Trevor Bauer going in game 1 too, I think, is scheduled. Yeah.
And the Twins, by contrast, will be, unless they are really invested in trying to win the division, which they've given no indication of to this point, they will be more interested in keeping guys like Cruz, like Miguel Sano, folks who have been nursing little things or in and out of the lineup a bit, keeping them healthy and fresh, getting their rotation lined up. It's hard to envision going, even if you go 5-0, and then you need the White Sox to only go 4-3, I guess it is. That's when they'd have to go 3-4, even if you go 5-0. That's a real outside shot. And so it's overwhelmingly likely that you're looking at facing New York. That doesn't mean that you take your foot off the gas pedal. You've got to try and win at least 4 of these, I think, because you want that series, that best of 3, to be at Target Field and not at Yankee Stadium.
Yeah, I mean, to your point, I think they will be trying to rest guys up. Obviously getting people in the best possible position heading into the playoffs is the utmost priority. But have a couple days off. They're off tomorrow on Monday. They're off on Thursday, which gives the Twins a solid advantage over the 2 teams they're in the running against. The Yankees play 7 games next week. The White Sox play 7 games next week. And I believe both those teams are at the end of kind of long runs of games with no breaks. So they're going to be a little more worn down. The Twins are at home with an opportunity to still, they can still give Nelson Cruz 2 days off this week and still play him for every game if they want to. I see Go Twinkies Go says, bring on the Yankees. Let's end this once and for all. And he says, home field, here we come. So let's talk a little bit about that, because that, the AL Central is not out of the question, but it's a long shot. Whereas if the Twins are going to be playing the Yankees as a number 4, number 5 seed matchup, home field advantage is very much up in the air. These teams almost have the same. I believe they are identical in the loss column. Let me look here. Yeah, the Yankees are 31-22 after finally losing to the Red Sox today. It was almost like a Cleveland-Detroit thing between those two teams this year. And the Twins are at 32 and 20, or I guess, no, they're 33 and 22 after winning today, right? So they have 2 wins ahead of them in the win column. And as I mentioned, the Yankees are playing 7 games this week, and they have a fairly tough outlook as well. They're going to Toronto to play 4 games. They beat the crud out of Toronto last week at home, but this Toronto team is not bad. I mean, they're heading to the playoffs and in the position they're at for a reason. And then the Yankees are going to come home for 3 games against Miami, which the Marlins are no slouches this year. They got some players. David, what's your feeling on the Yankees Twins run here? How much value do you think there is in playing at home for either of these teams, and how much do you think the Twins should really be pushing to edge them in that race?
Yeah, well, first and foremost, I got to say, here's the hierarchy, in my opinion, in the mindset of Rocco Baldelli and the Minnesota Twins. Number 1, keep your guys healthy. Number 2, get the offense going. And number 3, win the division. And maybe you could even throw some more things in there between 2 or 3, because I think at this point, yes, and I would love to win the division as much as anybody would. But at this point, it's not about that. It's about getting the team to play their best and to stay healthy. And if they're able to do that, I think they're going to be able to edge out the Yankees record-wise and play at home. And I think that's a big deal. I'm not going to bring up the history. We all know that, and there's some validity to it. The Yankees obviously are a good ball club. They have been for a long time. This year, no exception. But when you're looking at the 2 ballparks that they're playing at, even with no fans, there are differences between Target Field and between Yankee Stadium. At Target Field, right field isn't 6 feet from home plate like it is at a Yankee Stadium. So, and obviously that's an exaggeration. But at the end of the day, the Twins know Target Field better than any other team in the major leagues. They also, with that home field advantage, they're able to go home and sleep in their beds. There's that sense of normalcy, if that's even a word in 2020. There's that sense of normalcy. The new normalcy, yes. I think that's huge. And those small mental things, when it comes down to 2 really good teams playing each other, those are important. So I really do think, who gives a dang about fans, no fans, that home field advantage still totally matters. And that's why it would be great to see the Twins secure that against the Bronx Bombers.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to deny based on the results. I see Go Twinkies Go says the history is going to be history, and then follows up with a parenthetical that says I'm talking a big game to hide the fact that I am terrified. Can't blame you, man. We've all lived through it with the Twins and Yankees. I think a few numbers to keep in mind with regards to what you're saying, David, are the Twins have the best home record in the majors this year at 21-5 so far. We'll see how they finish in the last 5 games. The Yankees have the second best home record in the major leagues this year. So for these 2 teams, the Yankees are 21-7. So there's quite a bit of evidence. They've both been well below 500 on the road. It's small samples, and like we mentioned, empty stadiums. It's not like you're going into Yankee Stadium and facing the Bronx fans and their crushing, deafening, trash talking and all that. Not quite the same. But there seems to be a dynamic, and the Twins have lived through it. They, as my buddy Nash Walker, a frequent guest on the Postgame Pint, tweeted the other day, the Twins are 2-17 at Yankee Stadium since 2015. Matthew, what's your feeling? How much do you value the home field advantage thing, and how much would it increase your confidence if the Twins are able to finish with a better record than the Yankees? I should add one other caveat here. We were talking about tiebreakers and stuff. If the Twins and Yankees finish with the same record, I believe the Yankees would have the tiebreaker. They have the better interdivision record. That could swing if they got swept by Toronto this week, but it looks like the Twins, just as with the White Sox, are going to have to finish with a better record than the Yankees to win that tiebreaker.
Right. But in a better position to potentially do that, so they don't have to worry about it if they take care of their business.
True.
I'm not sure it's make or break. The bigger change would be if they did somehow pull out the American League Central, not only because they'd avoid the Yankees, but just that you'd probably end up playing Cleveland, whom you already know not only that you can beat them, but how to. If it's going to be the Yankees, home or away, they pose the same challenges to the Twins on a matchup level, on a team strengths versus weaknesses level. But obviously, being at home helps, not only for the reasons that you listed, David. The comforts and especially in this world, the lack of sort of outside stressors. But because you never know, a playoff game can come down very easily to the last at bat, to extra innings, and at that point, there's a material advantage to being the home team. It's not about theory or feeling anymore. It's actually, you get to bat last, and if you score, the other team doesn't get to answer you. So I think because they're closely matched enough, you want to get the home field, but unless they can actually change the team they're matching up against and the circumstances of that matchup, it doesn't matter too much what the venue is going to be.
Yeah, I think that's true. I see Ryan mentioned in the chat, I heard all teams will be in hotels starting with the playoffs, including home teams. I had not heard that. I guess it wouldn't shock me. Obviously, once we get past this first round and move into the bubble format, it's going to be a whole different deal. So let's, as we sort of wind down the conversation here for the night, I want to talk about the next week, the final week of the season. All of a sudden, we're only 5 games away from the playoffs where the Twins will be playing. I want to talk about the pitching matchups and how they might map out their rotation here for the final week. So, if we're going off the rotation as it has been, Tuesday is an open spot. That's the first of the series against Detroit. That would have been Randy Dobnak's spot. I'm guessing maybe Homer Bailey will be stepping in to pitch in this series. The Twins did open up a 40-man roster spot by outrighting Zach Littell last week. Or over the weekend, so that he is available to come off the 60-day or 45-day IL or whatever that's been contorted to. And then it would be Maeda on Wednesday, Rich Hill on Friday, Pineda on Saturday, Barrios on Sunday. I think we can safely say that Barrios is not going to pitch on Sunday because they're going to want him pitching either Tuesday or Wednesday, game 1 or 2 of that playoff series. I guess as I look at it, what I'm kind of guessing is that maybe the Twins will move Barrios up to pitch on Friday, which would be on 4 days rest. I guess that would only be, that would be 4 days rest, and then push Rich Hill back to pitch in the last game of the season. Since, if he pitches in the first series, it'll probably only be in some sort of relief role. David, as you look at the pitching matchups here in the last week, 5 games in 7 days, how would you go about it? What do you think Rocco's going to do? It's going to be interesting to see, right, if he kind of sets things where it's set up to be Maeda Barrios or vice versa.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first and foremost, before I get into that, I got to say, I see another comment talking about the hotel situation. If, in fact, the Twins do have to stay at a hotel, I would highly recommend the Radisson Blu in downtown Minneapolis. Excellent continental breakfast, really cool blue lights in the elevators. So on the 0.1% chance that anybody from the Twins travel staff is listening, my full recommendations go to that. But I would say, you're not going to see Barrios this weekend. And maybe even Maeda too. I think that, like you mentioned, Tuesday's an open spot. Homer Bailey, I've been itching to watch him pitch. Since I think he's only pitched 5 innings this year.
And he looked good.
And he did. He really did. And so, that could be crucial. And if he comes out, pitches a solid 7 innings, that's gonna expand the Twins' options when it comes to pitching exponentially. But I think, I wouldn't be surprised to see them bring Dobnak up, maybe even start for that spot where Barrios was at, or maybe we see Homer Bailey pitch there again. Who knows? But certainly I agree with you, Nick, that we're not going to see Barrios pitch this weekend. And we are also, there's a chance maybe even Maeda wouldn't, because I know that Maeda likes rest. So yeah.
Matthew, what's your feeling? I don't think they would skip anyone's start because they got to keep people on a routine, right? But getting a couple of extra days for guys and stuff like that. What would be your approach with setting up the rotation for these last 5 games?
Yeah, I think the open days make it pretty easy to line up the rotation just the way you want it. You can go Maeda Wednesday, Barrios Friday, Pineda Saturday, and then you've got on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, which is the dates of the AL Wildcard Series, Maeda on 5 days rest, Barrios on 4, Pineda on 4. And obviously the hooks will be pretty quick, especially for Barrios and Pineda, especially if there isn't a ton at stake at that point, if it's already sewn up for the White Sox in the Central especially. The Tuesday spot is the most interesting, and I think, Bailey, it feels so much like a wild card and maybe so much like a long shot at this point, especially after what we just saw happen to Jake Odorizzi. But it would be a big deal if he came up and had a successful start, albeit it would be against the Tigers. You got to watch him with your scout eyes and not just scout the stat line, right? But he'd be a difference maker because if they do win that wild card series, they get a reset on the rotation because there's a 3-day window for everyone to move to these neutral sites where the division series will be held. But then the division series would be played on 5 consecutive days. So if you got to a game 5, you would need a 5th starter. I don't think they probably want that to be Dobnak. I wrote this week at Twins Daily about why I don't want that to be Dobnak. I'd rather see him in a relief role at this point for them. A flexible and important relief role, but a relief role. And so if you've got Maeda, Barrios, Pineda, Rich Hill, with whoever might be piggybacking him, if that's Dobnak or Alcala or, a quick hook there, that 5th spot is still open. And you could bring Maeda back on short rest. You could have just an emergency bullpen game for your season kind of thing at that point. But it'd be nice to at least have this option in your back pocket. Have, if Bailey looks really good there, then you send him back to the alternate site while you're playing the wild card round. Find some way to get him competitive, looks against some more live hitters, and at least know whether or not that's a card you can pull out if it comes to it.
For sure. Yeah. I mean, great points about, I see Go Twinkies Go mentioning with the compressed playoff schedule, pitching rotations can't be compressed. There's just so many new wrinkles with the playoffs this year, with the sort of change in format, no days off. I do think that the Twins are at an advantage compared to a lot of the teams they're going to be playing in terms of the depth and the number of guys they can bring. We've seen them really do well in some bullpen games because they have so many relief arms they can go through. In fact, you could argue that some of their lower tier relief arms are more reliable than their high leverage closer guys at this very point in time. So some interesting things to get sorted out in the final week. And all of a sudden we're only a week away from the end of the season, and the playoffs get started a week from Tuesday. I see Snaz 22. Do you think Jeffers gets a start in the postseason if Garver doesn't get going? We talked about that a little bit earlier, sort of the catching situation, how Rocco might manage it in the final week here, as far as balancing the priority of trying to get Garver sharp again before the playoffs and also letting Jeffers play and probably be that guy who's going to start. So if you go to postgamepint.com, you can always find the previous episode. So if you miss any of this episode, you want to go back and hear that conversation, go check that out tomorrow. It'll be available via YouTube video. It'll be available in podcast form. I always recommend you can subscribe to the Twins Daily podcast, and these episodes always get released. You can listen back the next morning and always get sort of a nice breakdown of the previous night's game, a preview of what's upcoming. It's always either me or John or Seth hosting these, and, guys like Matthew and David and many of these other super talented, super bright Twins Daily contributors getting in on the conversation. This is a fun time to be a Twins fan. We're right down the stretch run here. It's playoff time. I saw someone earlier had asked, when was the last time the Twins were on a nationally televised game? I think I saw someone mention somewhere that the last time the Twins were on Sunday Night Baseball was like 2010. So it's been a long time, but they're going to be on national TV here next week. I can tell you that much, or the week following next when they're in the playoffs. So make sure to check out postgamepint.com. I'm sure we'll have episodes following all 5 games this week. There's going to be a lot of talk about getting set up for the playoffs, what the implications of these coming games are as far as what happens in the playoffs, and really keeping a close eye on those races, as we mentioned. The AL Central race, still technically winnable if the Twins do everything they can, and Cleveland lets up a little bit against some pretty good competition, Chicago. It's not impossible they could win the Central. Otherwise, it's looking like it's going to be Twins-Yankees, and it's a battle for home field advantage. So thank you to everyone for hanging out with us here on this Sunday evening. A lot of great comments. Great win for the Twins. They take it down 4-0, win the series at Wrigley Field, finish on a high note on the road. They're now 33-22 with 5 games left to go. Matthew, any final thoughts here as we sign off for the night?
Just that, I want to reassert, I guess, that it was so encouraging for the Twins pitching depth to see the way the series played out. The Cubs, both of the last 2 nights, obviously we saw Kyle Hendricks shut the Twins offense down. And it's possible that we've overestimated the amount that the Twins offense responded over the last couple of days. David Ross had to stretch his starters the last 2 nights because the Cubs bullpen is dealing with injuries and they were really thin to begin with. So you saw Alec Mills go out and give up the leadoff homer to Sano in the 7th last night, give up a hit after that really opened the floodgates. Tonight, it was Darvish going back out in the 7th, then it was the opposite order, a double and then a homer, and then he was pulled. Damage done. Those aren't opportunities the Twins offense is going to have in the playoffs, so they need to pounce a little sooner and knock out some of these good starters, even though they're going to see good starters like that. But it's very bracing to remember that the Twins don't have that problem. They can proactively lift even starters who are pitching well, like Michael Pineda and Jose Barrios were, and go to a relief corps that is deep, 5, 6, 7 guys deep that you trust, who can give other teams matchup problems, who can go multiple innings if they need to. And that's, I think, how the Twins are going to separate themselves, not only over this next week, but hopefully into a run in the playoffs as well.
Yeah, I'm feeling pretty confident in the pitching. I mean, it's hard not to feel encouraged by what we just saw against the Cubs. As we mentioned, maybe not the greatest offensive team, but a playoff team, a team that's winning their division, and certainly no slouches. Some pretty good guys in that lineup. David, any final thoughts here before we sign off for the weekend?
Absolutely. Well, I may be a Wisconsin Badger fan, but I'm going to go a little PJ Fleck. And then I'm hyped up right now. Go Twins, go Twinkies, go mentioned. This is a big series win for the Minnesota Twins. The Chicago Cubs, like we already talked about, are a damn good baseball team. They're no slouch by any means. And to get 2 out of 3 against them, especially against Yu Darvish tonight, who is a very, very good pitcher, is excellent. And it was also I'm seeing the comments about Wisconsin in the chat. I'm so sorry. We all have our personality flaws. But looking forward, the Twins, no, they don't have a super easy schedule, but I'll tell you what, they have a better schedule than the White Sox do, and they have a better schedule than the New York Yankees do. So the ball is in the Minnesota Twins court on how they want to finish off this season. And absolutely, this series was a confidence booster. I'm expecting nothing but great things this week, both from pitching and hopefully, we haven't seen this offense perform to its full potential yet this year. I tell you what, this next week would be a great time to make it happen. These Minnesota Twins are peacocks, and you got to let them fly.
I love it. I'm feeling very hyped up. That was a PJ Fleck motivational speech there. Yeah, that would be awesome. Obviously some positive signs from Max Kepler tonight. Let's see a little bit more of that in the final week. 5 games left to go. Playoffs coming up a week from Tuesday. Check out postgamepint.com. Check out twinsdaily.com. We'll have game recaps all the time. David was going to write the game recap tonight, but he joined us here instead. So our guy Tom is taking care of that for him. But you can always David was drinking a Coors Light, Mike, just to answer your question. Yeah. The silver bullet. So yeah, thank you so much to David and Matthew. Great chat, fun game, fun series. Twins take 2 of 3 from the Cubs. And thank you everyone for tuning in. Everyone have a great Sunday night and have a great week. Go Twins.